Can you see a slide rather than something else? Cool. Okay, so I'm Tom Crane. I'm Technology Director of Digirati. And we've been building a manifest editor. Now that's something that already exists, surely, and there are lots of tools out there that allow you to construct IIIF things. There's lots of precedent here, a lot of precedent from us. We've been doing this kind of stuff for quite a few years, and there are some fantastic tools out there like Annotate and Exhibit that do kind of related things. So I'm just going to look at some precedent from us plus the Bodleian editor. I'm not going to look at any other precedent because there's just so much fantastic stuff that we could talk for hours about it. So yeah, so we've been building kind of things that make manifests for various purposes for a long time. And the Bodleian editor is a thing that makes manifests for general purposes. That is a kind of a venerable piece of software that's been around for a long time. So what we wanted to do was, can we build something that allows people to build presentation 3 up-to-date IIIF manifests, and also can replace the various kind of ad hoc or bespoke tools that we've been building over the years that build what are essentially manifests with annotations, but that are designed to drive bespoke user experiences. And we've done a few of these. We built a manifest editor a few years ago for the VNA and the Delft University of Technology that allowed the construction of slideshows and enhanced the manifest with custom behaviors to determine how transitions occurred or the placement of particular panels. The same manifest editor was the basis of work for Delft University of Technology that allowed much more complex kind of exhibition construction, including multiple kind of collage-based canvases with multiple images on them and complex layouts. These things, though, required lots of work every time you wanted to add new features because they needed their own kind of preview environments. They needed configuration to customize the user interface. And it was a lot of work to maintain a manifest editor that kind of required all this stuff when you wanted to do extra things. And this idea of annotation-driven storytelling on top of manifests, this has been around for a long time. This is something we did 6 years ago for Wellcome Library. That includes nice triangular annotations that you can rotate to look at different bits of a quilt. So these are all background use cases. We did some user research to see if we could kind of understand the different needs of people who want to create manifests and see if there was, it was possible to produce a tool that could do all these things. So here's our user research process. We started by gathering everything we did know, and we had a kind of preliminary product strategy where we just tried to identify, what is the vision of the thing we're trying to do, what are our objectives, who are our users, what would success for those users mean, what would it look like, what problems are they trying to solve, and from our users, some of whom were real and some of whom were kind of ideal, we recruited a pool of users for testing, and then we kind of went back and created a better product backlog, prioritized that we could begin to action rather than just be kind of stories. Went through a design process involving a mixture of wireframes and technical design and kind of actual test implementations using kind of Bootstrap and JavaScript to test out particular user interface ideas. And then for the last few weeks, we've been iteratively building the manifest editor, and we're kind of, for a number of reasons, we're not, we're nowhere near finished, but it's coming along, and I will show you it in a bit. So yeah, as I said, kind of use a mixture of wireframing and a kind of narrative-based user story, where then the user story is kind of a detailed sort of user journey that's then annotated with technical details and GitHub issues, and then Bootstrap prototypes like this one you can see in the bottom here. So what was the product vision we came up with? There is a link to it. I'll share the links to all these slides at the end, but there is a link to the product vision here. But just to summarize it, the fact that most manifests are published by automated workflows, there are hundreds of millions of manifests in the world, probably billions by now. Most of them are made by machines. They're data transformations from other sources. But the kind of practical IIIF ability to handcraft manifests, opens up lots of applications for research and scholarship. We heard lots of user stories about kind of remixing and extracting, combining different existing manifests into new manifests, deconstructing very large manifests into smaller manifests, creating these digital experiences, bespoke content for digital user experiences and exhibitions. Now, our users, ideally this tool should be useful no matter what your expertise in IIIF is. If you're a IIIF expert who has no kind of problem with hand editing it in a text editor, you might want to use this tool as an alternative to doing that, just because it's nicer. If you're attending a IIIF training course and learning all about IIIF, this tool should be something that actually helps you understand what it is. The use of the tool should help you understand how IIIF works. And if you don't care what IIIF is and never want to learn anything about it, but have been given, say, a content creation task to produce a manifest, the tool should be usable without having to buy into anything. You don't have to understand how a PowerPoint file works under the hood to make a slide deck. That audience is a significant audience too. So I'm just going to jump in and show you some stuff. Now, the current UI of this is kind of preliminary, so it's finished, polished version. If I just jumped into the manifest editor and I'd never seen it for the first time, I'd get a splash screen that kind of just gives me a little bit of text about orienting myself. But I could just jump in and start creating stuff. But I'm going to open a manifest. And they're obscured by the Zoom stuff, of course. So that's it. So just to start off with, I'm just going to go and open a manifest that I've found or been given. I'm being warned that my internet connection is unstable, so I don't know if I'm phasing in and out here. Does it sound all right?
There's a slight stutter.
Okay. If you need me to repeat anything, wave at me and I'll try and.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Right, so I'm just going to go and load this manifest, and you can see it kind of works. It's viewer-like. I've got thumbnails. I've got the manifest details. I've got different views. I could go into maybe a more kind of PowerPoint style view where there's a central canvas where I've got my deep zoom capability, but I've got a thumbnail strip down the side. Or I could go into that kind of grid view where I can even kind of rearrange things and drag canvases around and reorder things. Or I could go into an outline view. And this was interesting from the point of view of learning about IIIF. The kind of ideas here maybe for more technical users who would want to be interested in seeing this kind of aspect of it. If you open a big project in a code editor, you might see lots of structure. So the same thing here, I can dive in and start looking at the canvases. As I dive down into these things, the kind of contextual thing that would edit that property is available to me on the right-hand side. Suspect that many users wouldn't want this kind of view, so they'd be happier with this kind of view, but let's kind of keep our options open for different users. I'm just going to close this and start a new manifest. Where's my window? Let's go. Okay, let's just go and open this. Right. Are we still here? Have I still got internet? Okay, good. Right. So one thing we wanted to do with this is to really be as flexible as possible for what the user might be trying to do or think they're trying to do. I've got some examples here. So supposing I want to add a canvas. Now I've just gone and grabbed some test images here to make this easier. So here is an image that's on the web. And I put this in here. Now, we imagine that unlike PowerPoint, if you're creating a canvas, you're probably going to be creating it from something rather than creating an empty space and putting things into it, which is the kind of slide model. So we've kind of gone with the assumption that, or the default assumption that your motivation is to create more things from content. So if you put an image in there, we'll measure it and say, I'm going to create a canvas that's this size. Let's just add that one. If you, so another one, if you create, say, let's grab another image. Add another one. Add the canvas. You know, I can just do things like this, and I'm not consciously creating canvases. I'm just kind of adding content. But if I needed to, I could, for example, place. I've lost my links. Let me. Right. What if someone had given me image services rather than static images? I can go and add canvases from them too. It's the same dialogue. I don't have to think about what I'm doing. Here I've pasted in an image service URL. We've analyzed the URL, identified that it's an image service, not an image, but it doesn't make any difference to the end user. They can just create content from it. I might also decide I'm a kind of advanced user, and I said, no, actually, I do want to make an empty canvas. I really do want something that's more like a PowerPoint slide that I can go and put content on, and I could create a canvas that way. But I'm not going to do that in this session. Let me just add one more to this to make it a bit more interesting. So this one. Okay, so one more image. Okay, so here's my so yeah, I'm generating a manifest. Now at this point I'm thinking, what does this actually look like? I could go and preview it in Mirador. What does it look like in Mirador? Okay, it's coming along. It's looking all right. I'm getting some weird labels down here, but it's working. I can preview stuff. Okay, so now I did notice in Mirador that my name is not particularly friendly, so let's try and improve that. Let's edit this. Okay, and create a label. Now, we again another kind of balance between the complexity of the structure of IIIF and the kind of simplicity of user interface is in dealing with strings. There are lots of strings that users need to enter when they create a manifest. Most of the time you're going to have, I'm thinking about a label and I'm going to put it in there, but IIIF actually requires you to state what language your strings are and also allows you to have multiple values for those strings. So in this scenario, you know, I've just gone and done this, and if I preview again, hopefully our Mirador viewer now has Hello Tank Webinar. But what if there were actually several strings I needed to put in here? I can go in and create some new ones. So I can say hello and say this is in French, for example. All these things are configurable, so the drop downs, the languages available, you can add new ones, etc. I can even add multiple languages in multiple values in the same language, and so on and so on and so on. So you know, and then these get hidden behind these more complex things. I can always see that there are actually 3 values for this. Similarly, with the kind of metadata, we try to keep it as low, you know, kind of low complexity as possible, but the ability to edit multiple complex language maps is still there behind the scenes. And I can kind of move these around if I want to change the order, do another preview. Yeah, okay, now we've got Hello Tank Webinar and we've got some metadata. One of those things didn't come out. And so, yeah, so this is cool. Now, you might have been wondering, how am I managing to preview these things? So one of the kind of problems with hosted manifest editors that are just kind of sitting there on the web is, what do you do with the stuff you create in it? Where do you put it? So what we've done is create a very lightweight service that runs, which is not a requirement for the manifest editor, but it's just a kind of useful side thing, which will just host the manifests you create as kind of as links. And there are preview links and there are permalinks. So I could actually save this thing to a more permanent location. This isn't its permanent location yet. This is a test one. And you can see here, actually, let's just go and grab this. If I go and open this, you know, here is my manifest. It's on the web. I could share that. It'll stay there for a long time. I'm not saying this is digital preservation, but it will stay there for a while. And this is an example of integrating the manifest editor with a service for the persistence of IIIF, so that, you know, out of the box, it's integrated with this just kind of lightweight hosting service. But you could replace that with your own endpoints so that you can hook it into your own systems. One thing I might want to do is use this manifest I'm creating in a presentation 2 environment. The manifest I'm creating here is presentation 3. This is a presentation 3 manifest. But supposing I needed a presentation 2 environment, I can export this thing as presentation 2. I get a little warning saying you might lose something if you do this, but I can take a presentation 2 version away from this tool. I'm just going to go back to the slides for a second. If I can find them. Where are they? Here they are. Oops. All right. Yeah. So that's a kind of brief view of the tool itself. I'm just going to look at some more use cases, because the kind of wider use cases are, assembling manifests from multiple media sources, not just images. And then this integration requirement that a manifest editor on its own is kind of handy, but you need to be able to plug it so that things like the file open menu or the save menu or the preview menu or the browse for IIIF to import menu can all have configurable endpoints, so you could hook them into your own systems. We want to be able to create manifests that are kind of completely interoperable, but also at the same time drive custom viewing experiences. So again, the config, the behaviors that are available to you out of the box are standard IIIF ones, but you could configure additional behaviors that are available in your environment to drive whatever extra functionality you need. Now, one difference between this tool and maybe a bodily manifest editor is the kind of how far do we go with annotations on canvases. If we want to meet some of those use cases that we saw for Delft, we actually need to be able to position media at different places on the same canvas, and we need to be able to draw boxes and annotate the canvas with labels and descriptions and text and HTML, support advanced composition features and collages. So these are all kind of future things which are in the GitHub issues, but aren't in the preview yet. So, and there's this other kind of consideration came up because as we were gathering the use cases, many of the use cases were not specifically about editing manifests, as in here is one manifest in the tool that you are adding things to or creating from scratch. They were about reorganizing existing manifests, cutting them up. They were about building IIIF collections rather than manifests as well. They're about using kind of specific tooling in a IIIF context that isn't actually manifest editing or isn't visual, things like bulk tools for pagination, things like that. Now, these are all considerations, and I'll get to the kind of implications of some of them in a minute, but our biggest consideration is about persistence. It's this kind of idea that a IIIF manifest, if you approach it thinking it's going to work like a slide deck, you're going to have problems when you try to, when you expect that you will be able to get images off of your desktop and put them in the manifest. A IIIF manifest is more like a web page. It's a document full of links to resources. If those resources are already there on the web, you need to add them into the manifest and make links to them. If they're not already there on the web, you need to put them on the web somehow. And the place you may want to put them may not have anything to do with where you want to put the manifest. So how do we solve that stuff? This is the kind of big problem of persistence. So we thought, in developing the manifest editor, we kind of shortcut a lot of that by providing an out-of-the-box persistent solution for the manifest itself that demonstrates the pluggability, but we have not yet done anything to demonstrate integration with persistence of assets, of images. But we want to make that pluggable too, so that if you do have images in your desktop, there's a hook in the manifest editor. When you add a new canvas or add content to a canvas, you'll be able to say, send it to that service so that can be hosted for me. So this is this need for infrastructure. A manifest on its own is no good unless you host it somewhere. But even if you manage to host the manifest somewhere, it's no good unless all the things it points at are also hosted somewhere. So it's that kind of need for infrastructure. And that kind of brings us to something that came out of the user research that we thought kind of was obvious, but actually wasn't all that obvious, about what exactly we're building here. Because with all this talk about services and hosting, the manifest editor itself is an open source JavaScript application under MIT. Anyone can take it from GitHub and host it wherever they like, do what you want with it, extend it. We want to make it completely pluggable and flexible. So you can adapt it and put it into existing tooling and workflows, connect it to your content management system or repository. But in order to, for it to be useful to someone, or to someone to kick the tires or get an understanding of what it is, it's no good it just being a repository on GitHub. Like the Bodleian editor, it needs to be hosted somewhere. And also it needs to have persistence at least of the manifest. So if you go along and play around with it and create a cool manifest from existing resources, you get a permalink you can take away and share with people and show them what you've done. And thinking about those other use cases, about the kind of adjacent tasks that people want to do, we've built the manifest editor as a kind of combination of a shell application, with the manifest editor itself being an app that's loaded in the middle, because the shell can provide the same services to other kinds of applications. So things like loading IIIF, browsing for IIIF, managing saving of IIIF, the state management of resources you've loaded into the tool, an undo and redo stack, previewing. These are all services that could be, services to multiple kinds of applications, not just a kind of pure visual manifest editor. So we've kind of separated out the components of the tool into these concepts. And I would urge anyone who's interested in this to go and look at the wiki that we've got on the GitHub site for this page, which kind of just talks through the ideas about how this thing is constructed, its architecture, because it'd be really good to hear other people's opinions on how this would be good to fit into your various environments. Just something I want to come back to again. We did a lot of prototyping using sort of bits of Bootstrap and wireframes as well, but thinking about this issue of just not requiring the user to make any decisions that we could possibly help them make. So anytime you bring in some content, anytime there's a URL, let's learn about as much as what's on the other end of that URL as we can, so that you don't have to kind of think about what's happening there. Don't prevent the user from controlling that, but just fill in as much as we can. So if you think even just linking to an image or a video or something, asking someone to fill out this form is one thing, because most of the stuff on here we could actually fill out ourselves by just interrogating what's on the other end of a link. So generally that kind of idea of making the tool do the work, not the user do the work, is kind of central to the way it's designed. The other big challenge is, we could say we're going to stick to a certain number of features and not support UI to edit the others. But how do we know what you're going to load into the tool? You could bring any manifest to the tool, and we don't want to break people's manifest just because we haven't got a particular complex user interface to support the structure that they've got in their manifest. So it's kind of dealing with that, what's the kind of baseline where we won't break anything that people load into it as long as it's valid, but we won't necessarily offer a complete wonderful visual environment for every possible IIIF construction that you can think of. That's a pretty tricky question to solve, so we're still working on that one. Just a quick word just to finish off about the foundations of this tool. It's built on a library called Vault, which is used for state management and loading and saving and normalization of IIIF. And it's built on a visual component called Canvas Panel, which provides the kind of viewing surface or annotation surface for canvases. Vault is in IIIF Commons, and Canvas Panel is still under development. Okay, I should probably stop because I think I've taken up at least 25 minutes.